Hey there, Street Fight Politics Nation. We're back again for another episode to describe the what I don't know, it's batshit craziness of the past 7 days. I mean, it's like I can't even keep up with it. It's like one of the things I put in to describe the episode is that if you understand general relativity, you know that as the body gets closer to the speed of light, it slows your perception of time. But everybody else, so for you spend an hour, the other people, years pass. And so that's pretty much the Trump presidency so far. It's only been 90 days, but it feels like 90 years. So it's like, we must be on some type of time dilation. But I want to turn this over to Harry and Christine and let them discuss the ins and outs of our new Gulag, where we're threatening to send not only just criminals, but also looking to send apparently American citizens now. Hey, Ken, welcome.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing this evening? Sorry I'm late.
Anyway,
we're live, by the way.
Feel free to join in. I'm going to sort of sit back and let you guys talk. It's going to be talking about the new American Gulag down in Central America. Just what that means for us. Anyway, Harry, why don't you take over from here?
Well, I was going to actually let Christine go, if that's okay. I mean,
please, Christine,
I don't have much of a voice today, so.
Well, pleasure to be here, but terrible circumstances today. President Bukele of El Salvador was here visiting Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and the question on everybody's mind is, where is Kilmar Abrego Garcia? And the DOJ has been playing around with the courts, doing a lot of sort of delay and obfuscation tactics. And pretty much today they went full on Orwellian doublespeak, saying in the middle of the Oval Office that they won a case that they lost 0-9, that the order said something that it didn't. And then after everybody's confused, Stephen Miller marches out and starts berating the press about the minutia of immigration law and executive authority with zero humanity, zero empathy. And frankly, it's a frightening time for everybody because Trump is floating the idea of sending citizens there. And everybody is just kind of looking around at each other where, we have this egregious human rights violation, like at the center of it. We are signing off on all of these human rights violations happening in our hemisphere with this detention center. And the government in charge is like spinning it into complete alternate facts. And, they're also disobeying the court, which is really a big deal. But in the context of everything else, like it's just also heavy that it's very concerning. So
I think the thing that really, really makes this even more dangerous to me is that you have Bukele, the leader of a sovereign nation, a completely separate entity from us, over which we ostensibly have no other than diplomatic power, and has said that doesn't matter what the courts say, he's not going to return him. He's in his country, his prison, and he's going to do with them what he wants. And that just opens the door for, exactly as Christine noted, what happens when they send a citizen to a Trump ally, like, I don't know, Putin. And we're not getting them back. What happens if they decide that loudmouth Harry Ramsbottom, aka my real name, has said too many things and has become too annoying, and they knock on my door, put me in the back of a van, and push me out to the airport and drop me off in Sheremetyevo Airport?
Well, at least you've got military experience. You sort of have some idea how to fight. So.
You keep your mouth shut, keep low, and become the gray man. That's what you do. That's what they tell you to do, and that's what you become. And look for your best opportunity. Which, let me tell you, the Russians are well practiced at keeping people in jail. That's not going to happen. So we are now, in my estimation, in free fall. There are no more guardrails unless the courts do something magical. At this point, I think it would have to be magical. We're done.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the part that really concerns me is that when you start floating out the idea that we're going to take citizens and send them out, I mean, literally, they could pick anybody off the street, and we're seeing way too many instances of obeying in advance and self-censorship all through society right now. It's like I've lost a lot of people from my social media feed that are saying, I'm scared to put anything up. It's like, people are talking about buying burner phones, when they go traveling, and I'm not talking about out of, just traveling, period. It's, and the thing is that there's still this wholehearted effort by people on the right to just normalize this. I mean, it's like over the weekend, we had Bill Maher go down and sit down with the president and literally just, had him come out and say, well, this comparison to, Hitler's just ridiculous. Well, you know what, Bill Bob, in 1937 and 1938, Hitler wasn't Hitler yet either. He hadn't killed any Jews yet. So, that was still to come. So I'm sure if you would have sat down with him then, he would be, very charming, and we talked, and he didn't, threaten, to send me off to the gas chamber. Well, good for you, Bill. I mean, I'm done with that guy. Just done with him. I mean, I'm tired of these guys in the media thinking that, that they're going to maintain some form of access by going and whitewashing, some literal, killer's ass. And that's what Trump is getting ready to become. And, that's the part I really fear.
So exactly a week ago, the reason I wasn't sitting here talking to you guys was because I was on K Street in Washington, D.C. at a lobbyist party, one of those things you hear about. And there were about 100 people in the room. 50 of them were, at least 50 of them were staffers from the Hill getting free food and drink. There, of course, were staff from the event that I was attending, the host of the party. And then we had at any given time about a dozen legislators, the most notable being Cory Booker and Swalwell. Nobody was talking about how dangerous it was. They certainly noted that we were in problems. They certainly noted that things were kind of getting out of hand, but nobody stood up, not even Cory Booker, who stood up and talked for about 10 minutes, which has to be a record short amount of time for him. But nobody was willing to say where we are with this authoritarianism, which is terrible because the people that were hosting the event absolutely were full out. The patriotic millionaires that I've been talking about, they were full out, full throated about authoritarianism and talking about how bad it was. But the politicians aren't meeting them, or at least not yet. And those are the people that we're putting our hopes on.
Well, I think
not that I can see.
We need to stop putting our hopes on people in Washington, D.C. This is going to be from the ground up. And, Christine and I had this discussion last week that the leadership isn't going to be coming out of Washington. And I don't know whether it's because it's capture, them, wanting to keep their seats, which is certainly a large part of it. But, and it may just be the fact that they're, so closed off from the rest of the world that they just don't see what's going on out here. And I can tell you,
here's what I see. I mean, because I do talk with these people, and I wish Louis were here because I think he could probably amplify this a little bit better. But they are so imbued with the old rules of the game, the old paradigm of how you had to do to get things done, and that worked a year ago. That worked 4 years ago. That's how we got the Biden's economic package passed. Was the old rules of the game. That's what you played. But since MAGA returned, and MAGA has the majority, and Trump has returned, those rules are out the window. They may be gone forever. And Schumer and I would say probably even Hakeem Jeffries just don't understand how much the world has shifted. They're still trying to catch up. And I don't think Schumer ever will. We'll see about the rest of them, but I don't have my hopes up. And so I agree with you. Yeah, it's going to be from a bottom up, and that's going to involve a lot more violence. By the way, did you note that this weekend somebody tried to burn down the Pennsylvania governor's mansion and kill his family?
Yeah, they came pretty close to it too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
the
that's
weird thing.
that's just the harbinger of what's to come.
Yeah, and it's I can't remember, but I think he was actually something about his stance on Trump was odd. So I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's like, they were actually in the mansion at the time, upstairs asleep when this guy did this, and they're burning the bottom floor. That's how you die in fires.
Yeah. So, I used to be able to say with 100% assurance and straight face that I did not own an assault weapon.
Well, I'll just go ahead and tell this. I had the chance to drive over to El Paso from Phoenix this past weekend, which was actually a very scenic drive. If you ever have the chance to go through Texas Canyon, I highly recommend that on I-10. It was, very starkly beautiful part of the country. It was very interesting, though, to get over into Texas, and this is El Paso, which is basically ground zero for all the border stuff. And I would have thought staying at their house, and I was in a part of town that was literally 150 yards from the border, which is actually for El Paso, a very, very nice part of town. I'm talking $1 million houses in El Paso. And you would have thought this was Da Nang during 1967. I mean, the number of helicopters you saw flying up and down. I mean, it's like, the people I was with, or we don't even notice it anymore. So, but it's like every once in a while we have to go out and get guys hiding in our bushes, literally, and call somebody to get them to move on. It's like, but the point with yours is that he's from Canada and she's from Mexico, and they've been very anti-gun, and she's been taking training in firearms, and he's finally said, you know what? I think it's time that, if you don't show up to a fight, it's a gunfight with a knife. So they're arming up.
To your point about the border, there's a headline that I did not chase down. It popped up on my phone either yesterday or today. And my apologies. I just, honest to God, been getting over this cold. So I haven't been up to energy yet. But military's taken over jurisdiction of the border. I don't know how far in. I don't know when that date is, but they're taking over border responsibility from DHS.
What Trump did is this backhanded thing where he declared a 60-foot strip of the border from all the way California, Arizona, New Mexico. I think it was just to El Paso, and now that has been taken under federal jurisdiction so that he can send the military there. I mean, tanks, the whole bit.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, there we are.
Yeah, we're cutting federal jobs to save money, and we're using multi-million dollar tanks to patrol for unarmed people sneaking across the border.
We're also having a big military parade for Trump's birthday as well.
That's right. $79 million, something like that.
That money-saving thing is the fig leaf. They're not. That's not even remotely in their calculations. As long
as you have your gold Trump head pen,
Oh yeah.
It's like Kim Jong-un called him up and said, "Hey, guy, that's really over the top."
That's really, that's tacky.
Even I don't do that. So.
Even they're dropping the claims. I guess Musk said in a cabinet meeting last week that instead of, it was originally $2 trillion they were going to save, then it was $1 trillion. Now they've cut that by 85%. I gather down to, and even that is, most of their claims are garbage. Talking about contracts that were canceled during the Bush administration, stuff like that. Yeah, it appears that at least that effort might be finally losing some steam.
Well, I mean, to me, it wasn't about cutting expenses or finding fraud ways. This was about giving Musk and all these other oligarch billionaires access to our data. This was just hacking into the databases. So
it's about destroying the government's capabilities. Okay, so when you destroy NASA's science and technology budget by 50% and cut the funding to JPL, and you no longer have the ability to do that, then you get to hire companies like SpaceX and Blue Horizon to do that stuff for you.
Right.
When
it's
you,
about shutting up people who keep saying things you don't want to hear. Is when you start cutting NIOSH, for example, and when you're getting rid of the client science groups at NOAA and NASA, it's because they won't stop saying things you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
It's a reason. It doesn't have anything to do with saving money. You're absolutely right.
Do you know who Pete Hegseth fired this week?
Was it just one?
Deloitte, Accenture, PwC.
Yeah.
A couple of the big 5 firms. He cut all of their consulting contracts from the DoD. I wonder who they're going to go to. Palantir, SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that just slid right under everybody's radar because we were in the tariff circus, constitutional crisis.
It certainly didn't slide under the radar here in DC.
I bet.
And it's let me tell you the effects that's having on the Deloittes, the Accentures, the Raytheons, basically all those large companies. General Dynamics. The public wants to think that all the tank makers and munition makers are just waiting with slavering chops for all this money. But the reality is most of what they make their money on is consulting back to the government, providing services to the government. And those services are being cut. So all those big companies that, we think about, the lords of war or whatever you want to call them, they're all losing money big style. Like there's even a question where they're going to get paid for work they have already done. That's in the courts right now. And so there's a lot of people that are really pissed off. There's a lot of people that are losing their jobs. I see contacts that I know in the sales part of the government contracting space that are already unemployed. Mm-hmm. They've been cut because that's what you cut first. When you lose money, you cut your salespeople and you focus on the work you got. And that's what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Did you see that the commander of the Space Force base in Greenland got fired?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Much respect to her, by the way, because she knew she was committing harakiri right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, that she's playing the long game. If there is a game to be played out,
she's playing the ethics game. She's playing the ethics game, but also on the right side, so that when all you had to know that her finger hovered over the send button for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And she probably swallowed a couple of times before she hit it.
This is a person that I'm sure has to work with the Danes on a regular basis.
100%.
And, so I don't know where she probably felt like she didn't have any choice. You just have this jackass come in from the U.S. and shit all over Denmark. She probably felt like in order to continue doing her job effectively, she had to make it clear that this does not reflect our opinion or our position. I agree with you. She probably knew she was going to get fired when she did it. I suspect she didn't think she had a choice.
No, I think and I think the choice wasn't because of her working conditions and her working relationships. It was because of the fact that she just knew this was wrong, and she wasn't gonna stand by and watch it happen without standing up to it. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of that going on right now. And that's, the upside of that is, hey, we've got moral people in the military. The downside of it is not as many as we did before, and the rest of them are really rethinking their life choices and their loyalties.
All right. Yeah, I wish we had a few more of those moral people at ICE, to be honest with you. That seems to me like the one that is going along, not just being the most complicit, but in some ways maybe the most eager to engage in some of this behavior.
I have more candidates from DHS, including ICE, that are trying to get out and find a position outside right now than I've ever had in the last 5 years.
That's interesting. And in a way, kind of good to know.
Well, yeah, except that these are the senior leaders that would be the ones to stand up and say no.
Right, that would say no otherwise.
Yeah.
It was interesting when I was driving back from El Paso, ran across a scene that apparently ICE is patrolling the Southwest I-10 pretty much from, all the way from definitely Arizona, New Mexico, into the part of Texas I was in. And they had these 4 kids, I'm going to guess early 20s, pulled over to the side of the road, handcuffed, sitting on the pavement, multiple ICE vehicles, like they were, some terrorists. And it's like, you could, I was thinking, do I stop and film this? And then I said, it's like,
No.
Yeah.
No. You would end up with them and they wouldn't care, and you'd end up losing 24 hours of your day.
Yeah.
I will tell you what was a little ray of hope I thought this weekend. Really interesting, surprised me with the vociferousness of it, perhaps, was the speech from the union leader calling for the return of Garcia. Did you guys see that?
No.
No.
Oh my gosh. I wish I could remember. So Garcia was a member of a metalworkers union or a machinist union. And they had a large conference, and I wish I could remember the guy's name. Really, really impressive speech. But the leader of this union wrapped it up by saying, I believe it was an AFL-CIO affiliate, this was not a small group, and saying, in addition to not getting pushed around, we are calling for the immediate and unconditional return of our union brother, Garcia, and got a standing ovation among a group of presumably machinists who you would not typically think of as being maybe, rabid liberals. And it was really, really fascinating. And I thought, this is an interesting little nexus of resistance here. Now, I'm sure in this case, specifically because the kid's a union member, but nonetheless, to have them stand up and have a voice be vocal about it and very, very strong was really interesting to me. And I think that situation may bear further watching.
Are you familiar with I'm going to get the number wrong, but it's the 50501 movement, I think it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So they were the ones that organized the multiple gatherings around the nation a week and a half or a week and a day ago. They're the ones that did that. They're organizing another one on April, is it 19th, 18th?
Yes. 19th.
19th, yeah, April 19th. Basically, the Concord and Lexington Day, for those who remember, 1775. And it's going to be another day of protest around the country. Talking to your point, Doc, about this being from the bottom up, I think we had 4 million people around the country a week ago doing this. It would be really interesting, and I kind of anticipate that we're going to have even more this next weekend. I will certainly be there, assuming that I can actually stand up and walk, which is a new thing for me.
Jeez,
I think we're going to have to dig deeper into hurting people to really get that, because I've been following what's happening to the farmers around. Yeah. And there was an article today I saw about this guy that's in North Carolina on the Virginia border that grows tobacco and soybeans, and he's having to he said his biggest thing now is not making price predictions for the future or weather predictions. It's like, am I going to have a tariff or am I not going to have a tariff?
Yeah.
And he was saying in this part of the country, it was solid Trump. And he was saying that even at this point, with these guys facing the same set of issues that he is, they're still proud of what Trump has done. And it's like, you're going to be bankrupt soon.
Well, the tariffs have not really even kicked in yet. I mean, the effect, that's going to take a few weeks, a few months before people start really seeing the effects of those things.
And it's such chaos. I don't think anyone knows.
No, they don't.
What the heck is actually, it's on again, it's off again, it's 145% against China, it's not against Chinese electronics. Oh, yes, it is against Chinese electronics. I don't think there's any plan.
There's a plan. Oh, wait. No.
I think maybe there are some intentions, but I think it's absolute chaos.
I'm with Ken. There is no plan. There's the concept of a plan, maybe, but there is no plan.
Okay, well, maybe plan is too strong a word, but if I want to be able to transfer billions of dollars to my buddies, all I have to do is let's tank the stock market. Mm-hmm. I'll send a signal to everybody, go buy all this stuff, and then I'm going to turn around and say, oh, no, we're going to hold off for 90 days.
I'm going to tell you right now, that was an absolute afterthought That was the reason why Trump turned around, and this is documented, was because he was worried about the bond market falling out.
Oh, which
And when
it was.
And when people lose trust in the U.S. Treasury notes, then Trump, he doesn't understand equities at all, but he does understand debt. He understands debt very well, and that's what Treasury bonds are. They're debt. And when he realized that he wasn't going to get that income from the debt that we were putting out there and wouldn't be able to finance things on that was a problem. And when that became noticeable to him and people were running away from Treasury notes and foreign investors were dumping them and the value was dropping on the market, it was that morning that he turned around and said, okay, we're going to give it a 90-day pause.
Yeah, he and us were facing 25% of all U.S. debt is rolling over this year. It's one of those things that it was sort of, I don't know if it was on purpose, but
no, it's timing. They issue these in tranches.
Yeah. Well, a lot of tranches are coming due this year, so that's a lot of trillions to have to refinance.
Yeah.
Did you all catch that bit in the cabinet meeting that they had the other day where Trump was saying that, he really wants to help the farmers out. So if there are any particular immigrants who are here, who are very good workers, that their employer can write a letter for them and that they will be allowed to stay. And
Dear Mrs. Jones, my son Johnny was sick from school today, and so he wasn't able to do his homework. So please let him back in class. Come on, give me a break. This is ridiculous. I know. He did it. He actually said that, and we're like, this is not a policy. This isn't going to work. And on what parallel universe is that going to happen? I can see the federal agent right now going, oh, Farmer Jones, he says you can come on over. You're okay then.
They're going to put them on work camps. They're going to make it so they have to stay on the property. Like they're going to let them come in there because also Ron DeSantis. So we have a immigration detention center here right now that's overflowing. And he very benevolently and uncharacteristically said that he actually wants to build housing for these migrants and, make sure, like do the humane thing and figure things out. And I'm thinking, he's worried about who's going to pick the oranges this year. They want to put them in work camps.
I've got a pretty good idea what that housing is going to look like. And it's going to look like a lot what you see in 19 Gomer Pile.
Right.
Yeah.
Coincidence.
Yeah, it's going to look a lot like that.
Oh,
but this is as valid as Trump going on Fox News. Was it yesterday or the day before and talking about his conversion to Christ after he got shot at? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
They actually published that. That was a headline for Fox.
Yeah, and that's why he spent all Sunday in church.
This is him. So talking about, farmers getting help, talking about his conversion to Christianity, talking about anything. He's saying anything that he can say that will make some small segment of his support group love him. That's it. That's all that is. It's just words. It's the same bullshit sales presentation that got him funding for a casino that went bankrupt. That's all this is.
It's playing to the base again.
Yeah.
100%. You notice though how this week Kristi Noem, not Pam Bondi, but Kristi Noem has softened her tone a little bit, and she's been a little bit more. We want to help you get a plane ticket and go back home so you can come back into the country legally. We want to, do the right thing now so you can get that second chance. Like Pam Bondi is still just like hammering home the line. Like he's in Tren de Agua and MS-13. He's in both. She is just hammering home that this is an undesirable person that we don't want here. This is somebody that deserves a life imprisonment sentence, so it's like, on one hand, like they're trying to be like, well, we are compassionate, kind of like we just, we have to have laws. But then on the other hand, they are really trying to convince those true believers that they did not do anything wrong. And, Bukele signed off on that as well. And he's like, I'm not going to release a terrorist back out into my country. this is an interesting thing because I used to think that I used to think, how come transnational gangs in the Western Hemisphere aren't considered terrorist organizations? And I thought it was kind of an arbitrary distinction. Now I understand actually why making that designation is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because now we've entered this territory of racial profiling. We can claim there's a war at the border because there's terrorists coming, so all of this sort of like playing with language
those labels exist for a reason. Yeah,
exactly.
We write our laws not based on the labels, but we write the labels based on the law that they support. And you're right, most people have no idea what that means. Of course they're a terrorist. Why don't we call them a terrorist? Why wasn't this crime a terrorism attack when that one was? And it's because it really does support the legal statutes that go along with that. And lawyers will argue that out and people won't understand it. And that's a lot of the reason I think why we're here today, because people just don't pay attention. They don't understand. They don't really want to understand. They just want things to work.
All the way down to insurance policies, are written with these things, with these legal definitions in mind, which is always why you see they're so careful after there's been an incident and everybody thinks that was probably a terrorist attack. But the responsible people involved are always very careful about using that wording, because as soon as they do, it triggers an awful lot of terms and things of the insurance coverages that was involved. It gets very, very complicated.
Yeah.
And these are words that have important definitions for very important legal reasons, as you just said. And and we've just tossed all that out the window too at this point.
Yeah. Oh, me. Well, I said a while ago that we're into consequence management now, and that really is where we are. We've tossed out our ability to influence people by any means other than force, either economic or military. We're certainly not going to get anybody to trust us ever. So there goes trade. The only way we're forcing people into trade is by tariffs, and we're going to watch that not work.
Right.
And we're already seeing, I think you pointed it out a week ago, that for the very first time, you've got Japan, South Korea, and China, all of whom have fought wars against each other and are not friends, do not play well with each other at all, ever.
Right.
Now, for the first time ever, trying to negotiate a trade agreement amongst themselves for the express purposes of getting away from the U.S.
He's uniting everybody around the world.
China right now has trade delegations, not just with the core of that free trade region that they're working on is South Korea and Japan. But I follow world news a lot. They have trade delegations right now in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, and they're trying to set up exactly to take advantage of this situation. What the Chinese are saying is they learned their lesson from the trade war in 2018. They have plans for all this. They are prepared for this. And I think in a lot of ways they were kind of looking for a trigger, waiting for a trigger. Because one thing the Chinese are very good at is playing a very long game.
Yeah.
They're willing to wait until they get a pretext to trigger a plan. I think they've had in place for a long time, which has shifted an awful lot of that world trade in their markets away from the U.S. But they needed some kind of a lever. There needed to be a spark, and man, have we ever given them one.
Yeah. Only what a lot of people don't get is that only 3% of the Chinese economy is based on trade with the United States. Only 3%. So if we just shut them down in the U.S. and didn't buy anything Chinese, that would not be that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
They could survive.
Right.
And they would just find other trading partners, because we're not just going to do it to them. They would increase that trade with every other country you just mentioned, and India, which is a huge market.
Absolutely.
And Europe, which is a huge market. And they're already beating our ass in Africa and have been for over a decade.
Right. No, we've thrown it away, and I don't think even a complete flip in policy right now would change that. Unfortunately, I think that's gone. And
I think we've given up. I think we've given up our leadership in the world, and I don't think we're ever going to get that back.
No, because they can't trust us, and you can't blame. They can't trust us, and you can't blame them.
Not at all. No, you can't blame them even a little bit. Other little, anecdotal stories in the news are American tourists overseas are now doing everything they can to not own up to the fact that they are U.S. citizens. They're calling themselves Canadians. They're anything to get away from the U.S. label. And again, who could blame them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My best friend is an expat that lives in Mexico City, and she said there's a vibe shift that's happened. There was already a little tension there because the expats in that city tend to use more resources than the Mexicans who live there. And, you know, like, so they always have their own little thing, but like the community was starting to get very cohesive. And then all of a sudden, you know, things kind of went south. But, you know, I have my daughter is 16, and there's a lot of, you know, Gen Z kids who are conservative. But there's a lot of them who also aren't, and maybe aren't old enough to vote yet. And they are very connected to other young people in other countries through apps like TikTok.
Sure.
And I have like hope for the future that as long as we have an internet where kids are still able to like make these connections with one another, that maybe for that generation, the United States maybe is not going to be the world superpower, but like they'll see that the American people are better than this. And this is going to require work on our behalf to like vociferously reject all of this.
But,
but that maybe that trust can be earned back and we can be a partner at the table.
The problem is that we have so digitized society right now that, you know, their ability to communicate is not in their hands. Their ability to communicate is being controlled by the likes of Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. And, you know, so if they don't happen to like something, they just, you know, start taking it with algorithm down to the bottom and they disappear. And, you know, it's like I've been hearing that from a lot of my friends in social media, that's exactly what they're saying. If you say anything that's anti-Trump, it's all of a sudden, you know, you disappear. And so, you know, there's being physically disappeared and then there's being digitally disappeared. And I think that's one of the things you're seeing is, you know, people are being digitally disappeared.
Well, you get the people like Heather Cox Richardson, whom I read daily, and her articles have been seemingly randomly disappearing and being hidden. There are others out there. She's the one that I know the most because I do read her daily, and that's you know, and it's not like she's a fire breather. She's pointing out facts, but she's got over several million people following her every day, and that's just on Facebook alone.
Yeah, and when you look at you know, prior fascist societies, it's like, you know, if you go back and look at East Germany, and at one time the Stasi had active files on 1 in every 3 people in the country. And it's just some phenomenal amount of people would report their neighbors and stuff like that. And so you say, oh, we don't have that. And it's like, well, I actually do. How much information does Alexa and Siri collect on you every day? You know, it's like, you know,
well, the biggest collator and organizer of data that I'm aware of, and I could be wrong, is Palantir. And Palantir's been doing this for the government for, 2 decades. They're heavily into military intelligence, national intelligence, and law enforcement. They're one of the biggest service providers to DHS and ICE for, again, data management, data analysis, data visualization.
Two more people, though, we got to add into that are kind of stealth. We don't talk about them as often, is Oracle and also LexisNexis.
Well, let's talk about Palantir back for a minute. Peter Thiel is the guy who runs Palantir. Peter Thiel is the CEO. Peter Thiel is, you know, the real evil genius behind the tech pros.
Yeah, he is.
And he's got I think he's the one that's actually got your Social Security data now. I believe that to be true. Fact check me on that.
Well, I mean, I look at that. It's like, I'm pretty sure the Russians have it too, because my identity's been stolen so many times.
Well, and Palantir's been embedded at the IRS for a very long time as well. So the IRS data is probably almost just as good as the Social Security data, if not better. So it's It's frightening, it's frightening. And, on one hand, they have these business interests, right? We know that Elon Musk is trying to make X the everything app. But Peter Thiel is also like, he's got weird ideology. He's
oh my God, he's probably the worst of them, honestly.
He is, and he is kind of just sitting in the background, counting his money, getting his government contracts. But he also has this worldview where he wants to see this fighting, this social fighting. There has to be a scapegoat, and then somebody's going to win. Yeah. And then that's how and they want to accelerate that. They want that to happen faster so that they can get to what the new thing is going to be, and they're going to be in charge of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's playing a long game, and I think he lets Elon go out there and be the sort of sideshow freak that, that everybody can kind of be distracted by what an idiot he is. And then behind the scenes, that's the real puppet master.
I think that's an accurate assessment, really. I mean, obviously the details aren't there and we won't know them, but yeah, I think that's actually what's happening. And so, yeah, I don't know what to do. I really don't. At this point, I'm starting to shift my focus from what to do nationally to what to do personally. And how do I survive this? What do I got to do to come out on the other end of this? And where do I got to be?
But I mean, I agree with you, Harris. Like, I've been educating myself on how to interact with police. If they stop you on the road, what can you do? If they come knocking on your front door, what can you do? What also, for all this to work, you have to have the police actually obeying the law.
Yeah.
And that, when you have a president who is definitely not obeying the law, and not just the law, the Supreme Court, and telling them to go take a hike, it's kind of hard not to see the police going, well, shoot, if Trump's not obeying the Supreme Court, who's going to mind if we, just don't happen to pay attention to a warrantless search, and
so,
that's what we're staring. I mean, and those are already occurring.
Let me tell you the micro decisions that I'm facing, and just give you one example. So in Arizona, as you know, Ed, you don't have to have a permit to carry a gun. If you can own a gun, you can carry a gun, concealed or otherwise, doesn't matter. So the concealed permit I got 20 years ago, that went away. That expired because I didn't need it. And then when I moved to a place that's pretty safe, I didn't need a gun permit. I didn't need to carry a gun. Never felt like I needed to carry one around. So I didn't. In Virginia, the law is very easy. You just apply at your local sheriff's department. They must, unless they find background on you, they must give it to you. And that's it. And that county permit allows you to carry pretty much anywhere that has gun permits. So I can go all the way to Florida, all the way to Arizona, any place but California. I can carry a weapon if I get that county permit. Easy done. $40, easy peasy. But do I really want to show up on this database? When he knows that I've got a weapon, I got a shit ton of weapons. He didn't know about any of them. But when he knows about that one, does that give them a license? Of course it gives them a license to come knock on my door. And do I want to be standing out about that? Or do I just want to carry illegally? And
well, what are
ramifications of that? So these are the kinds of decisions that are going through my head. I don't need the answers to those questions. I'm just telling you, these are the questions that are running through my head.
I mean, yeah, those are very legitimate questions too. And it still comes down to, are they going to follow the rules? And, I think to me, the real question is, if we get to the point where we have authority figures like cops that have just said, okay, we're not going to follow the rules, what do you do?
That's why I say we're in free fall, because I don't see a lot of cops. I don't see a lot of military. I certainly don't see the majority of any of them standing up and saying no. And at some point, they're already talking about going after the judges. At some point, they will go after the judges. And I guarantee you, nobody is administratively pure. They're going to find something on Judge Boas or whoever is standing up to Trump. And they will find something he did. He crossed the street on a diagonal, and they'll bust him for that, and they'll hang him up in court and have him disbarred or sanctioned or whatever. And that'll put the end to that sort of thing. So yeah, free fall.
Interesting. Well,
unless you can think of somebody who is going to stand up, other than the people, other than we the people.
Yeah, the only people that are going to stand up are us. And that's the message I've been getting out there. Every voice is important. Your witness and testimony when you talk to people is important. It's like, I was talking, at this party celebrating my buddy's birthday. And the lady that was serving bar is, I was wearing my Canadian elbows up jersey. And so, I was getting props from most of the crowd for that. And so, she said the same thing. And so we were going back and forth. And it's like, yeah, I've been a Democrat, but, I'm a conservative Democrat. I've carried all my life. It's like you go out in my truck, which, she's a woman driving, it's Texas. So, of course, you're driving the truck. And, but, she's saying that, she's become afraid and she's afraid to speak up. And, which is literally, almost the entire battle is once you've cowed everybody from speaking up, then, our power comes from us knowing who we are and being able to connect. And if you can't connect, then it's all of a sudden like you're in some dystopian society that you don't know that you're talking to a government informer or, somebody that's pretending to like, what you're saying. And then, it's like, or, they're an FBI agent trying to infiltrate, your cell or, it's like, you get down a rabbit hole really fast.
Yeah. And I think talking to people also reduces their willingness to turn against you, right? So, if shit really starts hitting the fan and people are really going without, they are much easier to radicalize, much, more eager to look for somebody to blame. And if you're checking on your neighbors, making sure that you have relationships with the people around you, even if, sometimes you don't agree with them, I think that they are going to be less likely to want to turn that on you, so like, I think community ties are essential because, if things disintegrate at a national level, all we really have is things at a local level. And you might not be able to de-radicalize or prevent everyone from being radicalized, but like the more people that you can build like empathy with and trust, the better off everybody is. Which can be challenging because sometimes people have really like distasteful opinions these days, and you have to be able to discern which distasteful opinions are the real deal breakers.
Well, we've got an interesting date coming up, and that's 420. If you are of the ganja crowd, it's also sort of a high holy day for that reason also. But it's also a day that Trump has floated as a day that he's going to go back to 1789 and, say that and use the Insurrection Act to call for martial law. And he's already set it up that, maybe he does like Eisenhower did. He only calls for martial law, just in Little Rock, to prevent people from rioting when we're trying to integrate, the schools. And he's already set, so we've got a 60-foot strip going along the border from California all the way to El Paso that, we're just going to impose martial law on that 60-foot strip. But now you've had the precedent. And, and then, now we need to move it forward and we're just going to have like a 100-mile strip. And, next thing it becomes the entire nation.
I think it's very likely. I was asked by somebody a month or so ago what my best guess for martial law was. And at that time, this was a month ago when, it seems like a different world back then. My best guess was that sometime next summer, not this summer, but next summer, in the lead up to the election, he would find a reason to go to martial law. It wouldn't take much, and cancel the elections because it was just too dangerous, to save people, whatever excuse it would be. I am now thinking that maybe it won't be that long. I'm more of the opinion that, it could happen at any time now. A pretext like firebombing the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. A pretext like another assassination of a CEO. And these things are going to happen. It's not a question of how or why. It's when, and it doesn't take anything really huge for him to say the country's too dangerous now. And maybe it's next weekend when we have 6 million people showing up and protesting around the country. All it takes is one idiot with a Molotov cocktail or one provocateur, and and he's got the pretext for it.
Well, I think that's exactly when it's going to happen when we have, because the forums I participate in, it's like, if you're going to go to a protest, know your rights, do not do anything violent, do not interact with cops. If they tell you to do something, just do it. This is not the time to put up that type of fight. And I think you're right. I mean, I'm really surprised there hasn't been a provocateur, some unbalanced guy like that guy that hit the Shapiro governor's mansion in Pennsylvania that, comes out with, a homemade Molotov cocktail, tosses it toward the crowd. And the next thing all hell breaks loose.
I mean, it's not even a question of why or how. It's a question of when some dumbass does that, from the left or the right. It won't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just the act is all you need.
Yeah. So,
well,
get ready, guys.
Well, we've talked ourselves into a nice dark space here. It's like we're running up on the hour mark here at 51 minutes. So, does anybody have any concluding remarks they want to say?
Well, in preparation for this upcoming struggle, I am going to brag a little bit. I never stopped doing rehab after my knee surgery back in November, and as of today, I've dropped 20 pounds since I've done that.
Nice job.
Nice.
And my fitness is up. So if anybody asks me, every other time I went to war, I got in shape for it. So why not now?
So if you ever have to go on a run, now you're going to be able to do it. So.
You know what? Honest to God, that was one of the things in my mind is I do not want to be left behind. I don't want to be that old fat guy that they got to drag by a stack and swivel across the finish line or leave to the hyenas. That's not me. I'm going to be at least at the back of the pack, if not the front.
Yeah, that's like the old saw. I don't have to run faster than you to avoid the bear. I mean, I don't have to run faster than the bear. I just have to run faster than you. I was in clothing sales at the PX the other day, and I was looking at combat boots because all of mine are old and my feet swole up. I can't wear them anymore. And maybe I should get some of those. I thought, no, I think my little Merrill Marauder tennis shoes will be just fine. A little lighter, a little easier to dodge around on the city streets. By the way, another headline for you. Pentagon is now considering privatizing all of the commissaries and PXs. Just putting it out there. I mean, is that a big deal? Do you think, Mike?
I think it's a huge deal. Yeah. We 150 years ago, all that was privatized, and we went away from it because it didn't work.
Probably
because you had sutlers shortchanging troops with cheap shit.
All right.
Okay, yeah, that's a good reason not to. So, well, yeah. I mean, along those lines, it came out today that information about Social Security is now going to be disseminated only through X.
I swear, I think they're saying that, but like it won't happen. Like it's just like, Elon Musk wants a little bit of attention for today, it gets to be edgy. And at the end of the day, they're going to put it everywhere else too, because, I don't know. I think it's for attention.
The more bullshit they put out there, and they know they put bullshit out there and they do it on purpose, the more people get distracted by it and don't pay attention to the things that really matter. Like people leaving the government service because they can't take it anymore. So
I agree. Well, I think we're going to have if we have a show next week, if we haven't had martial law declared and they shut us all down, we should have a lot to talk about next week. So
God bless us all, because it's going to get rocky.
Yes, it will. Well, guys, I've again had a great time. For all of us who have been here listening to us, we thank you so much. We really appreciate you tuning in. And I know that I've heard that people tune in and watch it at their own pace later. And so I'm, very happy to hear that. So, we really appreciate you. If you have anything you want us to talk about, please tell us, get the word to us. We love to have you participate. It's like, we've got the chat ready there to take your questions. And so from my standpoint, I think, we're done for the day.
Adios.
Adios, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.